So here's a fact that no one is talking about. No one is talking about the fact that another bomb blew up right underneath the UFC's feet right before the Francis Ngannou fight happened. Now, no one's talking about it because no one realized how important it was going to be as soon as Francis had the night that he had Saturday, because no one thought in a million years that that was going to be the outcome. But now, as the chessboard lays itself out, and you look at what organizations are going to do what Francis's next move is, what UFC's next move is, and the defense that they need to play, and what they would do in any other situation, they have a serious problem, and that's the direct result of a mine that they stepped on right before the Francis fight. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about Jon Jones going to Ariel Helwani, because I haven't talked about that yet, and pull up the receipts. We're going to show what Ariel said and why Jon Jones called him a backstabbing piece of trash, except not that word because I can't swear yet. Actually, it's been a minute. I probably could, but it's neither here nor there. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I'll tell you what, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that you know every time that I upload. Wait, you won't. You have to click the bell. And then when you click the bell, you'll know every time that I upload. So go ahead and do that if you like, and support the channel. I love you guys. Let's rock. All right. So I want to take you back. Okay, I want to take you back to right before the Francis and Tyson Fury fight was announced, right? Do you remember anything that the UFC did specifically right before the Francis and Tyson Fury fight got announced, where it was like, oh, in addition to most people saying, like, oh, this is dumb, it's boxing, whatever. I mean, if anybody wants to pretend like that was not everybody's take, that is ridiculous. That was definitely not my take, but most people we're like, this is dumb, I'm not even going to watch it, it's whatever. Dude, Chael did a poll, and it said, are you going to buy Francis versus Tyson Fury? I think 6% of people said yes. 6. How about now? Eddie Hearn just did a video, or just went public, and he's like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Anthony Joshua wants the Francis fight. We want to do Anthony Joshua Rumble in the Jungle Part 2. That came out today. Go look it up, okay? So the world has changed for Francis Ngannou. But right before they booked Francis and Tyson Fury, the UFC all of a sudden was like, we're going to do a baddest man on the planet fight. We're going to go Jon Jones against Tyson Fury. And they were trying to snake that fight because they knew that that fight was getting put together. And so they were trying to throw defense against it by offering Tyson Fury an enormous amount of money to come to the UFC and fight against Jon Jones for a baddest man on the planet fight, right? Now, why is that important right now? Why is that important today? Okay? Because it is very important. We already know what UFC will do to try to block anything that Francis does in the future because of the enormous threat that Francis now poses. Francis was a huge threat to them then, but it was like low probability of it actually becoming a serious problem. You're playing defense. So like I said, when I was talking about the Francis, when I did the video where I was talking about Francis's decisions that he's made, right? I was saying that like every decision that Francis made was like, will this get me closer to boxing, or will it stop me from being able to box? And then he would move in the direction of boxing no matter what, regardless of the likelihood of success or risk, etc. Right? So you have to, you got to factor that in every time that the UFC's making it. So they're trying to block Francis, but at the time that they were trying to do the Tyson Fury fight, they were just trying to block Francis, even though, they didn't think there was any likelihood that Francis could do well. The reason they're doing it is because they do not want to give Francis a huge payday, because then all of their fighters are going to want to follow in Francis's footsteps. Now, I don't believe that anyone is going to follow in Francis's footsteps regardless of what the UFC does, but the UFC is definitely going to try to play defense against anyone following in Francis's footsteps. They just lost the first champion they've ever lost, okay? So for sure, when they sit in their war room and they're thinking about how to react to these things, they're thinking about defense against Francis, okay? Now, what happened yesterday? What's the video that I did last night? None of you guys watched it. Doesn't matter. Deontay Wilder and Francis Ngannou are talking about doing an MMA fight. Okay? Do they have a contract? No. Do they have a contract? No. As far as I know, Deontay Wilder does not have a contract with the PFL either. So what does that tell you? What would the UFC be doing right now if they could? Or what are they doing? Right? You think that they're not going to offer Deontay Wilder an MMA fight? You think the UFC is not going to try to come over the top of Deontay Wilder and try to suck him into UFC? You really think that that's not going to happen? Of course it's going to happen. Okay? Of course they're going to make him an offer. Why did they have a bomb blow up under them right before the Francis fight? Think, before I even say it. Who do you think that they would have Deontay Wilder fight? Who would they dangle in front of Deontay Wilder? Jon Jones. Okay? Jon Jones. And so now Jon Jones has torn his pec. He's got a 10-month recovery. What do they have to offer Deontay Wilder? What big fight do they have to offer him? Think about that for a second. PFL, right now, when it comes to Deontay Wilder, who is going to fight in mixed martial arts, which organization has a bigger fight for Deontay Wilder? Think about that for a second and actually think about what that means, okay? Has there ever been a scenario since the UFC bought Pride where there was a fight, a mixed martial arts fight, against a star that was bigger than any star that was in the UFC in mixed martial arts, an actual mixed martial artist? We're not talking about like two boxers who are going to do an MMA fight. It's never happened. It's never happened. And right now, a competing organization has a Francis Ngannou, champion of the UFC, new face of PFL fight for Deontay, and the UFC's got nothing, dude, because Jon Jones is injured. That's the bomb that blew up. That's the bomb that blew up. Everybody expected Francis to go in there and get humiliated by Tyson Fury. So we never even thought about that. What happens if Francis wins? No one thought about that. Well, look at what happened. And guess what? Now, no Jon Jones at UFC. There is no Jon Jones. The UFC cannot offer them a Jon Jones fight in order to try to cock block the Francis fight with PFL. Because the UFC has more money than the PFL, obviously. They have the ability to pay an outlandish amount of money. If they wanted to, they could pay him $50 million. You know, wouldn't be profitable most likely, but they could. I mean, I don't even know if it would be profitable. But PFL has Francis. They got nothing. What are they going to offer him? Like, who could they put him up? Like Stipe? They're all, come on, man, fight Stipe. He's like, Stipe who? They're all, Stipe Miocic, the guy that Jon Jones was going to fight. They're like, he's like the 43-year-old firefighter? Yeah. He's the greatest UFC heavyweight champion of all time. He's like, yeah, man, I don't even know what that is, dude. Like, I don't even know what that is. Dude, it's a great matchup for you, too, dude. He's a boxer. I'm going to take that over Francis, who just beat Tyson Fury in boxing? Why would I take that fight? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? So that's the other bomb that blew up underneath the UFC right before this all happened. So that's the bomb. Now I'm going to talk about why I don't think a single other fighter, star from the UFC, is going to follow in Francis's footsteps. Because not only did, and one thing I hadn't even talked about yet today, is Nate Diaz also just did that. So you have two stars who got out of their UFC contract, and both of them went and got paid and had great outcomes, fantastic outcomes. Nate did it with not the blessing of the UFC, but he's kept his relationship strong with the UFC. Everybody wants him to come back to UFC, and Nate is going to come back to UFC. But first thing he did is he co-promoted a huge fight with Jake Paul, which I was at, which was so fun. It was incredible. It was an incredible event. And they did really well, and he probably got the biggest payday of his entire life. Biggest payday over there. Francis also got his biggest payday, not to mention an enormous contract from PFL that was much bigger than what the UFC, guaranteed money was. But so you have two guys who did it, and both of them had good outcomes. Okay, now why is no one else going to do that, in my opinion, right? Conor, I don't know. I have no idea what Conor's contract looks like, but I think it's fair to assume that Conor, if he does have a sunset clause, without any shred of doubt, might be able to make so much money if he puts on his own event that might be a whole other. Can you imagine if that happened? Can you imagine if Conor left the UFC? Anyway, I don't know about his contract, so it's irrelevant. But anybody else outside of Conor, Sean O'Malley, let's talk Israel Adesanya, let's talk, whoever, right? The reason that no one else is going to do this is because the UFC is going to offer them new contracts that lock them in way before they even start coming up on free agency, right? In order for Francis to have done what he did, okay, he needed to be the reigning heavyweight champion of the UFC, okay? When the UFC offers you, let's say it's a big star. Let's say it's Sean O'Malley. And they're like, all right, so we want to renew your contract. We want it to be a 7-fight deal, and we're going to offer, we're going to give you $4.5 million base salary. I mean, just pulling numbers out of nowhere. And it's an extra $2 million a fight. Okay? Sean has 3 or 4 fights. He has, I don't know, call it 4 fights left on his current deal. I don't know, 3 or 4 fights left on his current deal. And in order for him to turn that down, he needs to bet on himself to continue winning all 3 times, in addition to the fact that as soon as he gets to the end of his contract, like, the UFC could just sit there and not fight him like they did to Francis. Francis did not fight for so long, dude. He didn't fight for so long. Like, the reason that his sunset clause came into effect is because he signed an 8-fight deal, and he had 5 years sunset clause. Okay? And they're taking sunset clauses out. 8 fights, 5 years, and 5 years ended up coming into play. Not that long after his last fight. You know what I mean? So, well, I guess he averaged 2 fights a year, now that I think about it. Nonetheless, towards the end, he wasn't fighting very much. But so when you talk about Sean O'Malley, Israel Adesanya, any of these guys, they're just going to offer them more money. And they would have to take such an enormous risk to get out of their contract that it just seems extraordinarily unlikely. Because Nate Diaz is so popular that it didn't matter if he lost. Conor McGregor, so popular, doesn't matter if he loses. Just doesn't matter. It just does not matter. How many guys are like that, where it doesn't matter if they lose? Is Sean O'Malley that big of a star? Is he that big of a star? And as I'm talking about it is possible that some of these guys start doing this, dude. I mean, honestly, it is very possible that some of these guys start doing this. As I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking about it. The guys that could do it are the guys where if they lose the title, it still doesn't matter. Because Nate Diaz, it didn't matter. Sean O'Malley, might not matter. Israel Adesanya, might not matter. Because these one-off events, they can make a lot more money. But most of them are, like PF... Dude, I don't know, actually. PFL, if they've got deep pockets like this, it's possible that other guys will follow. I don't know. I don't think that's likely, because I think the UFC is just going to pay them more money. This is what happens when there is an open market. The monopoly lawsuit, that is because people were saying, like, the UFC just took away all of their other options so they could keep pay down. The UFC can pay more money, obviously. So what will actually happen is they'll probably just start making more money. You know what I mean? Anyway, so let's talk about Jon Jones and Ariel, though. All right, so going through the saga again, we all know exactly what happened, right? And this also plays into the Ariel and Jon Jones situation, because Ariel was one of the guys who was supporting Francis Ngannou throughout the whole thing. I heard that Luke Thomas did also. It's not really relevant because Jon Jones didn't get mad at him, got mad at Ariel. But I know for 100% sure that Ariel was definitely supportive of Francis leaving the UFC. Now, obviously, you have to question why he was so supportive, right? Because any fan of mixed martial arts, generally speaking, wanted to see Francis fight against Jon Jones. That's just is what it is. Of course, everybody wanted to see that fight, right? So Ariel will always do anything that he can to stick his fingers into Dana White's eyeballs, right? He spent years trying to fix the relationship. That's not getting fixed. Dana hates Ariel, and Ariel subsequently hates Dana. And so if he has the opportunity with the biggest journalistic platform in the mixed martial arts to try to, just boop right in Dana's eyes, he's going to do it. And so when he talks positively about Francis leaving, and then Francis ends up leaving, the whole world is, very, what's the right word? Critical of what Francis did there, including me for a while. Now, switching gears, let's talk about right after Francis left the UFC and how critical everybody was of him, because this has to do with the Ariel and Jon Jones thing and the fallout between the two of them. Now, all of us were critical for the same reason, which was you fumbled the bag, Francis, right? Like if you just kind of just looked at it, everyone was saying, dude, he fumbled the bag, okay? Not necessarily for the same reasons, though. My point was you left your management, and you did so because you were being not smart in how you were interacting with the organization. Like, you were going to dinners with the UFC and not letting your manager handle strategy, who is not talking to the UFC on purpose to make them come to you. Because if you won't talk to the UFC, who are they going to come to? Of course, they're going to go to the professional negotiators. That's why he's not talking to them. But then Francis keeps agreeing to go to dinner, so the UFC negotiates with Francis, and they convince him that, like, oh, what do you need a manager for? Not even talking to the UFC, and that's where you want to go. Managers not talking to UFC specifically because they know the UFC is going to have to come to them and start offering more money. If Francis is the one going to dinner and kind of doing the thing where he's like, oh, listen, I want to do this, want to do that, guess what? They're not going to have to do the thing that your manager is trying to do. He's probably nervous to explain it to you because, whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I was critical of him for leaving his management. Before he did the PFL deal, he has management again. Before he did the Tyson Fury fight, he has management again. Obviously, same management. That's what I was critical about, was trying to do it himself. That said, the fumble the bag thing just is what it is. That's what everybody was upset about. Ariel defended it because he's like, let's see how this thing plays out. But it did appear like Francis blew it, right? It appeared that way, okay? But now Ariel, having been supportive of those decisions, is, now he's gonna say, like, look at what I said. Look at what I said. And you got to question the real reason that he was the lone voice. Yes, Francis, stick it to the UFC. It's like, all right. You don't want to see Jon Jones fight Francis Ngannou? It's not something that you want to see. So that's why anybody who is overly supportive of Francis leaving the UFC, I got a question. It's like, dude, you really? Who doesn't want to see that fight? You know what I mean? But anyway, so now that Francis performed so well and the world has opened up like an oyster to him, Ariel and the other people who were supportive of that, well, specifically, let's just talk about Ariel, is doing the thing where he's showing receipts, right? I mean, it feels good. Listen, I'm not going to lie, man. It feels good when you make a prediction and then it comes out accurate. You know what I mean? Like that's anybody who literally has ever said anything to anyone predicting the future and then the future ends up being what they predicted. Everybody wants to gloat about that. If you have a channel, you just get to do it to more people. If you say to your wife, I think, listen, this guy's a big underdog. I think he's going to get it done. Just your wife heard it. He gets it done. You're all, I told you. I fucking told you. And she's like, yeah, good job, dude. Excellent job. Everybody does it, So I don't even consider it obnoxious. Now, when Ariel did it, though, Jon Jones got bent out of shape, okay? Because, well, let me rewind. So when Ariel was talking on his show after the fight and he was doing the thing, Jon Jones said, you are a backstabbing piece of shit, Ariel. And that is why I haven't given you an interview in years. And so Ariel, 3 hours ago or whatever, so as he put these up. So he says, Jon Jones, I'm here. Francis had the opportunity to face me and he opted out of the opportunity. If anyone should be criticized, it's Francis Ngannou. If I'm correct, he was offered the biggest contract in heavyweight history. He had the opportunity to be a guy to dethrone me. He didn't believe in himself. Francis didn't believe in himself. He wasn't willing to gamble on himself. Okay, so that is an absolutely absurd take, obviously. But Jon Jones signed a new contract with the UFC. He's the heavyweight champion in UFC, and of course that's what he's going to say. You know what I mean? Like, of course that's what he's going to say. So, I mean, listen, I'm going to be totally honest, I didn't see the segment where Ariel was talking about that, but if Ariel posted that right now, and then he says, he's like, this is what I was referencing, which is exactly what he says. He says, or calling your, continuing to quote Jon Jones. He says, and calling yourself the baddest man on the planet from across the street. Who does that? LOL. And then Ariel said, sorry, I didn't finish my thought there. That's my bad, but that's what I was referencing. Hope you make a speedy recovery, Jon Jones. And Jon Jones said, says you were looking for what? You're such a backstabbing shit talker, bro, and you wonder why I haven't given you an interview in years, Ariel. Okay, so here's the deal. Okay, when it comes to that stuff, this sounds like Ariel is being like, you said this, but you know what I said. I said it was going to happen. I said he was making the right call. And look what Jon Jones said. Jon Jones is wrong. It's like, dude, that's a really stupid take, And like I said, I haven't seen it, but if Jon Jones got mad, I'm making assumptions that is almost certainly why Ariel brought it up. Was Ariel's like, see, this is what Jon Jones said. He was wrong. Okay, dude. Well, not everything in combat sports is people trying to predict the future or say things that are actually accurate. You know what I mean? People are talking into microphones in order to promote fights, to try to bait people into fighting them in order to promote the organization that they're fighting for, etc. Jon Jones is the heavyweight champion in UFC. What is he supposed to say? What's he supposed to say? They're like, hey, Jon Jones, why do you think that Francis left the UFC? He's like, well, I look at it like this. He really, really, really wanted to test himself against the greatest boxer in the world, and, I wasn't exciting enough for him. I mean, of course he's going to say he's scared. He's scared. What do you think Chael would have said if it was Chael who was in Jon Jones' position and they asked him that? He would have been like, he probably went to go eat a carrot that he meant to feed to a bus because he's from Brazil. That's like my favorite line ever. I'm just saying, like, of course they're going to say he's scared. What else is he going to say? So, if anyone is questioning why Jon Jones said that, that's stupid, okay? He's saying that because he's the UFC champion, and he is saying what any UFC champion would say about the old UFC champion who went across the street, especially if you're an undefeated fighter who has been undefeated forever at 205 and you went up to heavyweight and you won the belt there after that guy left. What are you going to say? I'm really glad that he left because I was really scared of that guy. Like, Jon Jones is not the right guy to gloat on as it relates to this, because Jon Jones has every reason in the world to not say what he actually thinks. You think that that's really what he thinks? Come on, dude. I mean, maybe it's, who knows? But I doubt it. I think he's just doing what a company man would do, just signed his entire contract that way, right? Now, that's what it is. Now, let's talk more about, actually, I take that back. I am going to put what I was going to say before this segment. So this is going to be the end of the video. I love you guys. Subscribe to the channel. Peace.